I wanted to start just by sharing where I first learned about dialogue and what my initial reaction was. It was in the late 80s or early 90s. I was at a Peter Senge conference, and I thought to myself, this is no different than the way we work with children. And so it wasn't until I started sharing the principles, much like the sheet that you received, with adults, that we were able to have the kind of dialogues that children have, that are real, where there's a pause, where there's a moment to digest. And then I think that's the two secrets about dialogue is pausing after somebody speaks, and letting go of assumptions. So with that in mind, I want to share the other metaphor, and I don't know whether it was Krishnamurti or Bohm, but one of them describes a ping pong match where the ball goes back and forth as a conversation, or maybe a tennis match, and the ball goes back and forth, and that's like a conversation. But at a point, someone hits the ball straight up in the air, and it stays there. There's that pause, and there's a suspension of assumption. And that's how, I don't remember which one, described the nature of dialogue. So, share. This, I recently found, this was written in the 1930s by a man named Douglas Steele. And he said, have you ever sat with a friend when in the course of an easy and pleasant conversation, the talk took a new turn and you both listened avidly to the other and to something that was emerging in your visit? You found yourselves saying things that astonished you. And finally, you stopped talking, and there was an immense naturalness about the long, silent pause that followed. In that salient interval, you were possessed by what you had discovered together. If this has happened to you, you know that when you come up out of such an experience, there is a memory of rapture and a feeling in the heart of having touched holy ground. I feel kind of fortunate to have experienced that kind of feeling a few times, not often, but a few times. And so I went to videos, dialogues over the years. The first two were in person at the Krishnamurti conference, where there was no subject. It was the essence of dialogue, where just whatever thoughts arose. But all the other dialogues I've gone to, besides the online ones, have started with a short Krishnamurti video. So this is a 5-minute segment that could stir a dialogue. And we'll just, after it ends, I'll turn off sharing and we'll see where it goes.
What is the future of you? What is the you for mankind? What's your future? as we now are living, which has been the continuity of the past, right? Continuity of wars, hatreds, divisions, the ugliness that is going on, the brutality, everything. If humanity continues that way, and if you continue that way, there is very little chance of survival, right? Obviously, if every country in the world is preparing for war, right? There are the unenlightened countries are buying armaments from the enlightened country. Those who are highly civilized, like Britain, France, they're supplying armaments right and left to everybody. Because in industry becoming necessary to supply arms, right? So their economy depends on it. So the continuity of war, destruction is guaranteed. And what is the future of all of us? Not only of us, of the coming generation, your children. It's really a very frightening world. You may talk about all the rest of the things we have talked about, gurus and followers and all that silly stuff. But this is a tremendous problem. If we go on as we are going on, we are bound to end up in a catastrophe of some kind. And if you accept that, it's all right. If that's what you want, it's perfectly okay. But if you say that's totally wrong, totally unholy to kill another, for whatever cause, for whatever reason, for your honor, for whatever reason, kill another is the denial of the most holy. So what we want to do? It's a very, very serious question. We can only exist on this earth when we treat the earth as ours, all of ours, not British, German, or the rest. You perhaps and we realize then will it affect the whole consciousness of mankind if I really, if you and I really deep do not belong to any group, to any nation, to any sect, will that affect the whole of the world? Of course, if there are all of us in this hall, in this tent, really felt this, would naturally affect the whole of consciousness, even of the political.
At this particular moment, I'm sensing a kind of tension in my body from the two different messages that we just heard, and also the silence that arose. I'm not saying I have to do anything about it, but I just noticed that in my body.
I guess the one thing that's revolving for me pretty lightly right now, but is the question if anyone can really like want to induce this kind of chaos in the world. And because I think at one point in the video he made mention like, oh, it's all right if a person is okay with this, if they're okay with in the world going in the direction that it's going in, or this pollution, or killing these beings, whatever it may be. And so I'm just kind of allowing that question to kind of live, to see if it's possible for someone to be okay with that.
I think people ignore. I think people will ignore the truth of it. But it's hard for me to think that anybody watching that video and really thinking about it, it's hard for me to believe that anybody would be okay with that. But given everybody's busy life, some people do just choose to ignore it.
For me, that brings up a deeper question. Why do we make that choice to ignore that? What is it that's holding us back? That's the part I don't understand.
I've found my whole body kind of feeling its way into, how do I hold the question of responsibility for so much, and to be part of a world that is spiraling downward, and what does that mean for what it means to be responsible if I don't want to go in that direction. Not just in a conceptual way, but in a day-to-day. How do I be in relation to a world like this? That not like this. How do I be in relation to this?
My mind, I go to a solving mind, but I know that I'm not supposed to be trying to solve a problem. Answers come to me, and I tell myself, this is about dialogue, and I'm not supposed to be solving. That's the point. I mean, why couldn't there be at any time of the day, 24/7, a channel where any number of people could come together like this and watch a Krishnamurti video like this, knowing some bit about dialogue that you can sit in silence. I mean, there are people who do daily prayers. Why couldn't there be something like, see, that's where my mind goes.
After Camden spoke, it made me think of, how that question of why we ignore, that Cheryl also said. Why does that come up? Why do we ignore these things? And understanding that for ourselves. And then that action that we take, Robin. How do we do something? And I mean, like you're saying, Cheryl, just by being exposed to a video like this, just to having it in our awareness, in our consciousness, that this is a reality of the world around us, there's a level of awareness that may not be the full answer, but maybe it's a first step. And then that brings me to start to wonder about if that awareness is there and we're not ignoring it, does the responsibility, do the actions naturally start to arise? And how can I start to watch that in myself if I do have that awareness? What do I naturally start doing and living that does it affect change if I simply live with that awareness?
I think the question that arises for me is the question of what is this? What is the this that we're talking about? In a sense, the gross industry of war and the fact that the economy depends on it seems to have this momentum of its own. But Camden, when you speak of being okay with it, or others have said ignoring it, or people, I think Viola mentioned holding back. What is the this that we are trying to change or holding back from or okay with? And do we see any role in this? Do we see our daily lives participating in it, or is it a separate issue of war out there? That's the question for me.
I'm thinking maybe what we fear, I mean, we don't want to face that we are complicit in all of this. It's a lot easier for most people to just sit back and say, we will let the dominant mindset, which must be right because it dominates, and I have no voice, so I'm just going to sit back and see what happens next. In other words, we're maybe afraid to take action of any kind, afraid to speak up. A lot of people have been silenced. So that's what I'm thinking maybe is something that's happening, why people don't pay attention or don't want to pay attention to the reality of what they see with their eyes. And then also afraid to look within and see how are you feeling within about all these things. It requires a lot of reflection, I think.
I know that for myself, when I have an intellectual relationship to these concepts, it's one way of, it's another way of not really looking at them. For me, my sense of when I'm at war, it comes really quickly. You know, it catches me by surprise, and I can catch it, and I can, you know, stop it or mitigate it, but I'm not yet at the point where it doesn't ever happen, and there isn't ever, you know, some sort of need to make amends or that kind of thing. So what is for me the question becomes, where am I still where am I still participating, not willfully, not because I want to be, not because I think war is an answer of any kind. It's not that. It's that, where does my that warring internally, and can I watch that and observe it and never look away from that? Because that's the only way I can feel like I can even wrap my head around it. If I look at it too much of humanity, then I'm taking myself out of that piece. I have to look inward first and find those places where I'm still creating more. And it's painful, but just to observe that. Sometimes I don't know, that's all I can do.
When you say all I can do, what crosses my mind is that we're all involved in holistic education for a reason. I mean, we're here because I assume our values are divergent from what Krishnamurti was expressing about war and the industrial world. I was part of that world. Before becoming a teacher, I was actually working for a military aircraft contractor. And my children were going to a Montessori school. And I walked into that classroom one day and I felt something wholly different. And I left the engineering world and became a teacher to respond to the issues that are so dear to me. And I didn't realize I was living a lie in the life that was a lie between what I was feeling and what I was doing. But with teaching and working with children, that all shifted.
I'm finding I'm having so many thoughts at once that I'm having difficulty dropping in to the dialogue. But at the same time, I will share a couple of things. So one is the idea of why people give themselves permission or find themselves being okay with atrocity, or inactive anyway, in the presence of harm. And I think maybe once we acknowledge it, once we see it and name it and recognize it in contrast to our values, we must, or feel we must, take some responsibility. And the taking of responsibility and sort of feeling compelled to action is overwhelming in the face of the enormity of injustice. It reminds me of that. I'm not going to tell the whole metaphoric story and hope people know it, of the sea stars and throwing the man who's throwing them back into the water, despite at a low tide, despite the fact that the task of rescuing these dying creatures is unfathomably large. Can't be done, can't have a real impact on the death around him. But he does what he can. He makes the commitment to save this one and the next one. And I wonder about finding a way to not experience the sort of deadening weight and inertia of overwhelm, and giving ourselves somehow leeway, permission, congratulations for doing the little actions that we can. I agree that committing to a more human, life-giving and holistic way of educating young people is, you know, is a really soulful, honest way of expressing, for me, of expressing myself in the world. And then on a bad day, I feel like it's so not enough. Like, it's not enough. What, you know, how do we move the needle? And then I'll be reminded by someone wise that that's not the point. You know, anyway, I could ramble, but I'm gonna stop.
My thoughts go to Greta T, and how she started her movement just by herself with a sign, sitting in front of a building. Sometimes I feel like I need to do something similar. But, you know, why don't I? I don't think it's going to do a thing.
Yeah, the word atrocities. Hi, everybody. The word atrocities. There's the internal and the external, the interior and exterior. And sometimes in my life, I think the atrocity that I don't allow out there, I don't know how to reconcile that which is happening inside. So just with all of the war comments, all of the conflict comments, the atrocity also, there's the internal that we allow to ourselves, from ourselves, which is probably a good place for us to start when we're talking about trying to do something scalable out in the world.
If you say more, where do you start internally? Kim, I don't know if you heard me. I just wondered if you could say more about that. Where do you start in
Oh,
terms
I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was a question. I apologize. So just from a place of experience, I think that I can look at a conflict in a classroom. I can look at a conflict between professionals. I can look at all kinds of things out there that I have skills and I've gained skills and I can actually have some kind of impact. And yes, all of what I've heard, I agree, I limit the scale of out there, but I forget about taking care of the internal, like here comes an emotion, here comes an emotion. Usually those emotions that are not joy are some kind of indication that there's some kind of conflict in me. You know, if I feel fear, if I feel anger, if I feel frustration, it's probably some kind of conflict, either all inside of me or I'm projecting out onto somebody else, you know? So the atrocity often is that I'm not generous enough. I don't have enough forgiveness. I'm not listening enough to that part of me that actually did have some kind of atrocity perpetrated. That then if I can notice, I mean, isn't that what we teach our kids in SEL and holistic? First step, notice. If you don't notice, you can't get a grip on it. So I'm just saying that if I notice there are certain emotions in me, if I can follow them down and start with myself, a little generosity with myself, a little thanks and gratitude to forgiveness on the interior, on peace treaties on the interior, on dialogue and diplomacy in the interior. Did that help?
Yes, I appreciate you answering.
Yeah, kind of my next go-to has been around desensitization, and how, you know, it's like letting the one atrocity go by or not stand up for it or not speak against it kind of cascades into just like a series of losing our sensitivity to what causes this war in the first place. You know, even I look around at all of our cameras, right? And we all have these houses and, you know, these a lot of square lines, square houses. And, you know, I really appreciated how Krishnamurti, at least in some of his dialogues, did it in those big tents, like outdoors. And there was a connectedness even in this. And, you know, so our sacrifice of wanting to be more comfortable, wanting to be more sheltered from the outdoors experience, more climate controlled, how that is only a part of this like large process of desensitizing, that makes us have to do conversations like this, maybe to remember how to become sensitive again, to be able to notice, right? Like Kim was saying, get a grip on it in the first place. And so I guess the question is, you know, is it really a movement towards sensitizing ourselves? You know, like the first movement towards, I don't know, addressing the atrocities within or without.
Sounds to me we need a little more self-compassion, maybe. I wonder, we're too hard on ourselves and impatient, maybe. Just a thought.
Can't help but see the parallels that are in this dialogue and what we're talking about, the nature of dialogue, of listening, of not trying to come to an end point, and just feeling, are we doing what we're talking about, trying to do right now? And being like kind of getting some goosebumps. Yeah, maybe this is it right here. And also recognizing my own, like there's definitely still, even now, some tension in my body when I think I'm ready to say something, and a little bit of nervousness, and realizing there's a lot of people in this space that I respect deeply, and I'm aware of every word I'm saying, but also it takes practice. So if I don't try, then what good will that do? So just feeling, like you said, Cheryl, 24/7 dialogue space.
I find myself thinking occasionally in our conversation, our dialogue this evening, about Paulo Freire, which is not usual for me. It's not my go-to. But in particular, the idea that when we're not noticing the horror that humans are inflicting on one another, what we forget is that we are inherently complicit, that inaction and lacking critical thinking perpetuates, strengthens, and reifies whatever dynamics are in play. You know, and so while inaction and, you know, I don't know, scrolling, doom scrolling, as they say, or, you know, getting immersed in whatever distractions, our sports and our, is self-preserving in some ways. It also inadvertently isn't a neutral thing, right? Like it's actively promoting the status quo. And Freire talks about the process of liberatory education beginning with developing the capacity to notice and name the conditions of oppression and one's own oppression, which I think is a good place to start, maybe. And another, I don't know, influencer for me who is coming to mind is Carl Rogers, when he wrote about congruence. And by that, he meant, I think, a kind of alignment between the interior and the exterior, so that when our, you know, I think I try maybe to avoid prioritizing interiority over action, or the converse. And ideally, there's a kind of what he would call congruence when your values are expressed through your actions or as Parker Palmer would say, when you let your life speak, right? Your life, the way you're living, is a reflection of your interiority. All right. Yeah, I'm finding this evening, I don't know why, I'm thinking less linearly than sometimes, and just meandering, which is lovely that you're allowing me to do that. I feel like I'm in good company.
What's rising for me at the moment is really a deeper reflection on what Kim said, that it's hard, not hard, if we can't do it for ourselves in our own body, in the way we think, if we can't explore the patterns that we hold on to, then it becomes even more challenging or divergent to try to do something, you know, to be an active fixer, you know. Or maybe it's a simultaneous activity of looking in and remembering that when we're out in the world of doing. And I'll meander just a bit because in response to that, one of the things I really avoid is the news. I just, yeah. I had an experience of living with somebody with Alzheimer's, and the news stopped because it was so off-putting to me. And I just have kept that rhythm. I mean, I'll watch once in a while, but then I realize, what am I doing to my body?
I don't know if this feels like my PE job teacher, lecturer, didactic, gotta say something smart self, but yeah, it just feels like we're at the both and place. You know, when I'm doing both of those things, Paul, are true. You know, when do we choose one versus another? Both are interior and exterior important, both, you know, and I think for me, the quandary is having enough awareness to choose, oh, put my emphasis on this part of the pole or this part of the pole. That's enough.
Yeah, I love, for example, Thich Nhat Hanh's call to be always mindful, to be always aware of one's interior, to, while you are in action, while you are washing dishes or whatever, you are cultivating awareness. And I love that Bell Hooks, right, used Thich Nhat Hanh as a really strong influence, as well as Freire. And like, yeah, I'm going to be a powerful warrior in the world to affect the little bit of change that I can when I can, to name and confront injustice, disrupt status quo, and pay attention to the spirit. simultaneously.
I guess listening to Viola, did you want to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I was just thinking about what Paul said. I think that we're living in a society that's so easily distracted. So that if we watch, I don't watch the news either, Phil. I just avoid the news because we have a choice. We're going to listen to it or we're just going to listen to something else, you know. So the agency is something we need to practice, you know, that I have a choice. But that's what I was thinking when you were saying that, Paul. So now I lost my train of thought. I do that easily. So go ahead. Gopal. I can't, is that your name?
Yes, that's
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I was just listening to several of you and then also reflecting on the tape itself. I've been sort of just trying to review what is this thing called war, and also connecting it with what Philip raised in terms of holistic education. So this movement to fix, first of all, to fragment things into pieces and then to try and fix it seems to me that's a kind of metaphor for war, right? So if you're the problem, my way to fix it is to get rid of you. This process of fragmentation seems to be constant in our way of thinking and our way of acting, inner, outer. Something is a priority, something isn't a priority. You, me, right? My internal problems as though they're separate from what's going on outside. So is there an action and a response that isn't an attempt to fix fragmented problems? If I feel a country is creating this problem, my way of fixing it is to go to war with that country. If I feel you are separate from me, and my way to fix it is to get rid of you. Or if I feel I'm the problem, then my way to fix it is to kind of put a box around this is who I am, and I've got to fix this. So is there a movement and an action that isn't fragmentary? But at the same time, I feel listening to all of you, there is a kind of urgency and a sincerity in listening to the enormity of the crises in the world, right? So without losing sight of that, is there an action that isn't an attempt to fix fragments?
Meditating, perhaps? I just bubbled up to answer your question. That's an action that has nothing to do with fragmentation. I have to say that I do watch the news. I feel like I have to, and it's like, how would I know? How would I know that I need to get out and peacefully protest if I don't watch the news? Because we do have done peaceful protesting, and I don't know. I have to keep that in my head. I can't just Google a Krishnamurti video and watch that and find out how bad the world is. I have to watch it daily and try and digest it. Otherwise, I don't feel like I'm being honest with myself, maybe.
Yeah, it seems like at least when I idealize like a more indigenous worldview, there are far fewer actions that lead towards fragmentation. Actions seem to just lead to harmony generally, following intuition. I think maybe something along this intuition or intuitive movements are going towards this holism. But in the society that has been created around all of us, I think it is very hard to find actions that don't lead to fragmentation, especially when participating in these big systems of grocery stores and warehouse goods and mass automobile travel, and the list goes on and on. But it seems very tough. We've made it hard on ourselves to find those actions that lead towards wholeness.
I keep thinking of Gopal's question about the same as you were just addressing too, Cam. Actions that lead toward wholeness, actions in response that are not an attempt to fix and repair or fix the problem. The fragmentary kind of approach that we've taken through most of human history. And even like how we talk to each other right now, how we listen. Is there something that's not fragmentary, but also each day as I'm interacting with neighbors or friends or with myself in my yard, in the parks, can I even notice when I'm fragmenting myself? Can I even notice that in those moments? I'm just putting it out as a question.
And I would just say, Robin, that I think watch my language a little bit. I think it would be important to remember that while it feels like most of human history that we've been fragmenting, that most of human history, the 100,000 years of indigenous cultures, was not a worldview of fragmentation, that's been a very recent corruption of natural ways to be a human being. And I think to re-enchant, revision, and restore an indigenous or kinship worldview, since it just hit 5:30, is what holistic education is. That's the imperative. That's the goal. That's why we're bringing children into nature. That's why we're engaging kids with mindfulness and reflection and silence and beauty and craft and relationship and community and all these things of reconnecting and restoring wholeness. And that is going to be the foreword of my next book.
You're muted, Phil. Yeah.
Since we're talking, I'm just going to pick off where Paul left off. Well, from everybody, because, whoops, it was like, I was just listening to an Alan Watts talk he gave in the 50s or 60s, in which he goes on to describe the Indian sages' worldview. It was really a cosmic worldview, and he called it Indra's net. And he goes into explain how everything is interrelated and integrated. And in addition to the natural world, I think we have to share stories with children about how everything is connected. Stories of the cosmos, of how we got here. I think that's integral to creating a holistic worldview. That in fact we are the universe acting in the form of a human being.
I've been quiet, but can I say one thing? My name is Jackie Mon, and I thank you, Andrea, for letting me know this. It's because I reconnected with Phil Gang. I've been in the Montessori world probably about the same amount of time as he has. And I've just recently begun some work on putting Montessori under the bigger tent of holistic education and sort of finding those relationships. So I've been quiet, but I really appreciate being here and have a lot to reflect on as I go forward. So I just want to say thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks for being here. I really don't want to stop this.
2 more hours. 2 more hours.
Sometime?
What was that, Sarah?
Are we gonna do this again sometime?
Yeah, 24/7. It's on. I would absolutely love that. I hope that Phil and everyone here, please, will join us again. I know in 2 weeks from now, we already have someone who's joining us, but I would absolutely like to continue on dialogue gathering, maybe on a regular basis, every few weeks, and this felt really good.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.